Here it is, guys. It's the brisket video. Everybody's been waiting a long time for this one. I promise you we're gonna make it worth it. Every single thing, step by step by step by step, from selection to where the brisket comes from, to trimming it. We're gonna show you multiple different ways to trim multiple different briskets. I'm gonna trim one, Brad's gonna trim one, Cole's gonna trim one. We're all gonna teach Sawyer how to trim one, and then she's gonna trim one. We are going to go through our seasoning and why we choose that. We're gonna go through our wood selection and why we choose that. We're gonna go through smoking it. Ironically, the easiest part. We're gonna go through wrapping it. We're gonna go through resting it. That's the one we get the most questions about, resting. And it is also pretty simple. We're also gonna go through slicing it, and then at the very end, we're gonna show you a beautiful plate, how to plate it up, how to shingle it out, how to garnish everything. We're gonna show you our Akaushi briskets that we get from Heartbrand Beef right here in Texas, Flatonia. We're also gonna show you a couple other different ones, some choice briskets, just something you can get at the grocery store. And then we're going to show you the way that we do it, the foil boat, the new hotness. So let's go.
When it comes to cooking Central Texas style brisket, we're all using the same cut of meat, the same simple salt and pepper rub, the same style of cooker, and even the same type of wood. So it's really all the small details that come together to separate the good from the great. And in my opinion, one of the most important details to making a delicious Central Texas style brisket comes down to the trim. Having the right amount of fat on there, using all the meat to its best potential, whether it's on the burger or on the brisket itself, rendering all the fat down that we don't need for a perfect slice of brisket to confit our beef cheeks in, and really just delivering the highest quality product we can to the customer. So today we're going to show you all about how we like to trim briskets here at LeRoy & Lewis. All right, when it comes to trimming a brisket, first thing we're going to do is open it up on the meat side of it right here, right along the fat. This way we're not putting any scores into the meat itself, and we can collect all of the meat juices here in the bag for easy cleanup. And the reason we can score this fat without worrying about it is because this is the first piece that we're going to remove. And to do so is very simple. We're just going to come in on this side, and it's got a natural seam separation. And a lot of times you can just kind of pull it away with your hand. You can even hear it wanting to rip apart. And then we're just going to use the tip of the knife, seam butchery style, and remove this big chunk entirely. It wants to come right on out. And this is just a big piece of fat. If we cut it in half, you can see we're not losing any meat, and we don't want this on the brisket because it won't render down, and we get that nice end slice of fatty brisket that'll have a big fat glob on the end. Right here, that's the piece I'm talking about. That's what we just removed, and we don't want to have that on there because that's a big piece of fat that's not going to render down. That's just going to bring down the quality of one of the best slices on the whole brisket. Now that we've got that fat removed right in here, we can go through and just smooth everything out. Anything that's got this feathery edge on it, we just want to remove, because anything that's too thin is just going to burn up. So we're going to make a meat pile over here and a fat pile. The meat pile will all go into burgers. Fat pile will get rendered down and turned into beef tallow for confiting our beef cheeks. Gonna go through, remove all the silver skin on top. This is a particularly clean brisket, but all this stuff right here is a layer of sinew or connective tissue called silver skin that we want to remove, because when it cooks, it's not going to break down, but it will tighten up, and that'll pull the fibers closer together, which will make for some uneven slicing down the road. And when, a little trick for removing silver skin is always to slice with the grain. If you go against the grain, you're going to just have a really tough time getting it off. Another trick you can do is kind of put your hand underneath, lift it up a little bit, get to these lower regions. But that's looking clean enough for me. Again, you don't have to remove all this stuff, but it's going to look a whole lot nicer if you do. It's also a great time to admire the marbling on this Akaushi brisket. While we're on this side, one thing I always look for is this amount of fat right here on this side. We're just going to take that down, save us some time in the long run. Again, big chunk of fat, don't need it. And this backside is looking real nice. But again, anytime I make a cut, I want to go through and round off the edges just so nothing gets too crispy. That's what the back of the brisket should look like. Again, we could probably even go through and take a little bit more of this out, but there's not much in there. Looking good to me. Flipping it over, first cut I always make on this side, after pressing it down to make sure it's sitting flat. That way you can see where everything is raised up. First thing I like to do is take care of this piece right here, right where the point meets the flat. There's always, every single time, this big chunk of fat. So what I like to do is right where the meat ends, go straight down to where this level of fat is, and then scoop that whole piece right on out of there. And again, if we cut this piece of fat in half, we'll see we've lost 0 meat, but we got rid of a lot of fat that we would not want on our final brisket. While I'm over on this side, this is also a great time to start working on all of this raised fat over here. If we look at the end, we can see that there's a pretty good amount of fat on here. We're looking for about a 1/4 inch, but you can see it pretty clearly raised up right here. So we're just gonna use kind of this part as a guide and try and match it. So we're gonna come right on through, take that down, and just go all the way around, bring that fat level down to about a 1/4 inch all the way across. And this side right here is where we just took this big piece of fat off on the other side. So we know that there's a whole bunch of fat right there. So I'm gonna start rounding this end right off. Starting at the back, just gonna take it all down. And this part just takes time. You really need to get to know your briskets. But if you go little by little, you can just get it down to the perfect level. You can see right here, we're getting close to the meat. You can see the color change a little bit. If we crack it open, we can see it in there. So that means I know I'm in a good spot as far as having enough fat so the brisket won't turn out dry. Scalped it a little on that side. Try not to do that, but it happens. And if you ever do, it's a really good indication of where the fat is. Overall, when trimming a brisket, you really want to make it nice and aerodynamic because the smokers use a lot of convective heat, so anything sticking up or hanging off or that's really thin towards the edges is going to burn up. So we're just trying to make it everything round as opposed to square or coming to a nice thin point. But this is looking good. I like to give it a little scrape with the blade just to get rid of all your knife marks. Again, that's more for airflow and presentation than anything else. So now we've got the fat cap taken down to an appropriate level. We're gonna move on to this, the point. Right here we've got this straight down line. We want to smooth that out, and in one motion we're going to take out a lot of this fat right here because you can see there's a whole bunch of fat right there that we don't necessarily want, while making it aerodynamic. We're going to lose a little bit of this point meat, but it's all for the greater good. So I like to start right where that first cut is, and I'm basically going to kind of round it off while scooping out a bunch of this fat. So coming down, we lost maybe 1 slice worth of fatty brisket, but we got rid of a whole bunch of fat that we're not gonna want in the end. So this little piece will go right into our burgers, or maybe we'll save them, make some burn ends, and then this is going into the tallow pile. At this point, if this piece is hanging up really tall, it'll burn up. So we're gonna just go ahead and smooth that out a little bit, and that is looking really nice and aerodynamic all the way across. Still might take some of this fat out. And now it's time to make the overall shape of this brisket a little bit better, because as you can see, this is really thin over here, and right here there's just a bunch of lean meat with no point on top. That's great for burgers or beef jerky or something, but as far as the brisket's concerned, it's not gonna be a beautiful slice. So what we're gonna do is just round off the end here, burger, and then we're gonna draw a line that's gonna kind of come somewhat like that. And basically what we're gonna get rid of is all of this exposed meat here. This is all just lean meat that's gonna be too dry for slices and not have a proper fat cap, as well as being really thin on the edge. So this is gonna take care of that really thin edge, so it's not gonna pull up when we're cooking it. And this is also a great time if you're cooking a lot of briskets to make sure all your briskets are the same size, generally speaking. That way you're gonna have a much easier time predicting when they're all gonna be done, as well as making sure that you're gonna have exactly what you want. Because again, this meat is a lot more valuable to us in the form of burgers than dry, unservable brisket. And once you make that nice fresh slice, you've got a really good shape on there. And it's also a great opportunity to look at the end. As you can see, we've got about a 1/2 inch of fat on there, so that lets me know that I'm gonna take a little bit more off, just to make sure we don't end up with any unrendered fat on there, or anything that's gonna be chewy or unpleasant in the mouth. Nothing's gonna pull up on us, none of this is gonna burn, and in my opinion, that is the perfect shape for a brisket. Nice and clean on the backside, not too much fat, everything's rounded off, and that's the shape we always aim for.
All right, so this, despite popular belief, is the top of the brisket. This is the top of the brisket. Let me say that again. This is the top of the brisket. The top of the brisket. This is the bottom of the brisket. Okay, now that we have that done, basically make a cut into the plastic, in the decal, get the brisket out, be one with the brisket. I didn't always do it this way, but because of LeRoy and Lewis and Bradley Robinson and the great Evan LeRoy, I cut the decal out now. Hadn't always done this, but makes a big difference. As Brad showed earlier, you don't have to make your first cut on the block a big nasty chunk of fat. Basically, after I've done that, I'm gonna flip her over and I'm gonna make my first cut, which I'm gonna go on the decal side of the brisket. I'm gonna cut that. I'm gonna see what we're working with. We've got a pretty good fat cap. Gonna throw that in the fat pile. Then I'm gonna take this crazy looking thing over here called the mohawk, and I'm gonna start trimming in, and I'm gonna make that chud cut on it. Gonna just round her off. And then I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. Then I'm gonna take my knife. Bradley likes to go scoop in this way. I go scoop out this way. Gonna go this way. Just gonna build those layers of flavor. Look at that! A5 Wagyu. And there it is. Now we're done. Just kidding. Gonna make another cut because I don't like the way that looks. So let's round that off. And you know what happens if we scalp a brisket? Throw it in the trash because you're horrible. Just kidding. Everyone scalps briskets. Example A. Even the best of us. Basically, just gonna keep cutting. Blue's my favorite color. Basically, with the foil boat, we can leave a little bit more fat on than your typical brisket trim because the top is always gonna be exposed, so you're always gonna be rendering fat out. That's all she wrote. Just gonna clean her up. Basically, this is it. This is the bottom. The bottom.
Who hurt you, Cole?
Season the sides.
First of all, we got to choose our brisket knife. These are the two that I like to trim with. One's a little bit more heavier, you can kind of take big pieces off with. One's a little bit more for detail work. These are both of my trimming knives I use for briskets and for breaking hogs and for trimming cheeks and trimming ribs and really anything. Now, this is a scimitar Victorinox, right? Did I say that right? Victorinox. And then I think this is a Hinkles. I don't know. I've used it so much. No, it's Wusthof. Classic Wusthof. You can tell that it's been sharpened a lot because it's been, you can see it sharpening down into the little pieces there. So, all right. I've already honed them. We're going to open it up first. First thing you do when you open it up, we got to take out this big piece right here, and we're going to open it up right on this huge piece of fat. So as you can see, this is an IPP, USDA choice. Paid about $45 for it from HEB. So we're going to cut into this brisket on that big piece of fat that we're going to completely remove, and I don't want to damage any other part of the brisket. So we cut into that because we're going to take it completely out. Big boy in the cryovac. So, I mean, every brisket's basically the same, but they're all a little bit different. That's why we're showing you ones that we get and then also ones that, you know, you just get at the grocery store. So 5 cuts. There's 5 cuts to trimming a brisket. And if you just remember these 5 specific cuts, then you can trim any brisket you want ever. Doesn't matter where it comes from. First one, taking out this big piece right there. This is the big one. First one right here. Then we're going to do a little bit of cleanup on the back. That's like 1.5. So basically the back is 1 cut. We flip it over. Oh God, this is a hideous brisket, but we're gonna do our best with it. Second cut is going to be kind of taking off the mohawk. It's gonna be over here. Third cut is gonna be shaping one side. Fourth cut is gonna be trimming the fat down. And then the fifth cut is gonna be kind of shaping up this side. This piece of fat basically brings these 2 muscles together. We know the brisket has 2 different muscles. There's the leaner side that has a little bit more smaller muscle structure here. And then there's the fatty side, which is this muscle. You can also see the 2 different muscles here. There's one here, and then there's a different one that kind of goes that way. And this has a little bit more of a larger kind of muscle grain structure. You can see the kind of larger fibers there, and then the kind of smaller fibers there. So this big piece of fat brings these 2 together. We're going to take it off completely. First thing I try to do is dig my finger down in here and just look for where the natural separation is. A lot of people, a lot of barbecue places will just kind of level this off. And then that first cut that you're going to make, the best cut on the entire brisket, is going to have a big chunk of fat on the bottom of it. And that's what we want to completely avoid. That's why we're going to take out all of this huge piece of fat. There's a natural separation in there. And then we're just going to find it, and then we're just going to open it up with our knife. Take this part off here. That's where our natural separation is. We're just going to kind of take it off. Trying to leave all the meat on there that we can. Took a little bit off here, but that's okay. Now, I basically opened that thing up, and then I just peeled this whole piece off. We're going to do our 1.5 and take off some of this stuff on the bottom. I don't worry that much about a lot of this stuff on the bottom. First of all, I'm going to clean up this little area, kind of where they come together. This wasn't necessarily part of that big piece up there, but I'm just going to clean that up anyway. Of course, we're saving all of our fat so we can grind it and render it in confit beef cheeks and other things. Not super necessary to get every single piece of this. Kind of just about how much time you want to take doing it. Okay, if you have a kind of a gash right here, the thing I like to do is just like try to level it out as best you can. Like, it kind of sucks that that's in there, but like we can't really do much about the fact that it is in there. So we're just going to try to work with it and steer into this curve, kind of level it out the best we can here. Okay, I'm not going to take off this stuff over here because we are going to end up kind of curving around here, and all this stuff is going to come off anyway. This is good enough for me. Like a little bit of stuff on the back, not a problem. This is really not going to affect how our brisket is going to cook. But it's flat, it's even. This big piece is out. That's the most important part. Now, Bradley kind of comes down here and goes out. I like to kind of come the opposite direction. So I kind of start down here. I'm going to switch to my big guy now. And then what I'm looking to do here is just imagine this piece is not here, and just kind of imagine a flat plane that kind of works its way along here. And we just want to even the top out. And this almost does the same thing as coming down exactly right here and coming out. We want it to be even, so everything cooks aerodynamically. And I also kind of came down over here too, and this kind of goes into it being aerodynamic. That looks like a lot, but it's going to become burgers, and that's another video. You've seen it. So if we imagine this brisket cooking on the smoker, the firebox is over here, the smokestack is over here, there's convective air and smoke blowing over it this way, and we want it to kind of roll over the brisket. And if this big thing is on there, it's going to kind of like hit this and then come up, and there's going to be a lot of heat and air on this part, and then this is just going to get crispy. And then also when we go to carve it, like this piece is going to be enormous, and it's not going to be even, it's not going to look good on the final plate. Now we're going to go with the kind of shape on this side. And what I like to do is make the two sides parallel, and then about 3/4 of the way down from the top, 1/4 away from the from the bottom, we're gonna start curving it in, because this piece right here, it's a lot thinner than this piece over here, and if you don't take that off, this is gonna start to curl up, and juices are gonna pool right there, and it's not gonna be pretty. It's gonna ruin your crust. It's also gonna cook a lot faster than everything else. Take this whole piece off, and then cut around. Get our nice curve. We're just going to clean it up a little bit. You can see it kind of comes to a point over here. That's not really what we want, if that's kind of be beating it up right here in the front. So I'm going to kind of come down and just make this into a nice kind of rounded shape here. So we've taken off a lot. You know, this is almost the exact size as our brisket. But here's the thing, when this cooks down, it's going to be about half of its size now. It's going to lose a lot of weight in fat and in water. And when we grind these up for burgers, they're not going to lose any weight, right? It's just going to be one burger is one burger, but one brisket here as 8 pounds is not going to be 8 pounds later. It's going to be like 4 or 5 pounds later. So it's more lucrative for us to use that trim for burgers than anything else. We are going to kind of start up here and then work our way down, kind of clean this top up. We don't really need to trim pretty much anything here. We can see the fat right there, see through it right there. Basically looking to take off kind of like a chunk, like a long strip, basically from like right there along there, kind of comes out here a little bit and then comes back around here. So I'm going to kind of tilt it up, look at where I want to cut into it, kind of make sure I'm not cutting into the meat right there. And I can kind of, think about where the meat is going to be. If I kind of put my finger there and kind of put my finger there and kind of feel around, I can feel this hard fat here. I can kind of know exactly where I want to go here. This kind of comes out a little bit here. It doesn't on every single brisket. Kind of shaping it up on the side here. And then we're kind of creating this hard angle, and we're going to come back and then we're going to kind of shave down that angle. This is a B. This is a B brisket. I was always a B student. This is a B brisket. I scalped it a little bit. This kind of area isn't perfect. To be honest with you, I don't trim that many briskets anymore, so I'm kind of a little bit out of practice. Don't necessarily know if I could do it with a blindfold on. The back looks okay. It's a passing grade, and you know, it lives up to the expectations that we need it to. This is a choice brisket. It's not going on our menu. It's gonna be sent to some friends once we cook it. That's a brisket. That's my brisket. It's a B. It's average. It's fine.
I'm just gonna talk through it, and you guys tell me if I'm screwing it up too bad, okay? Okay, so I got Brad's trusty red carving knife. I'm going to open the package on a part that is very fatty. So I'm assuming I should do it right there.
Other side.
So the brisket, right here.
Right there.
That's it.
Cut it off. So we're going to remove this decal fat. I'm fingering the brisket.
You see how there's like a pocket in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, peel that open as much as you can, and then kind of just flick the knife tip.
Oh yeah, I got this. And then I'll make sure it looks better. Brad just directed me to just go through here. I'm gonna cut off all the big stuff that's kind of gnarly. This is our mohawk, and this is really nasty fat right here, right? So we're gonna cut this off. Actually, I'm gonna do, you go like in, and I'm gonna do like Evan did. Do I just, and I can just keep going, right?
Keep going, yeah. Anything that's standing tall, you just want to knock it down.
We are aggressively trimming because all this is gonna go to make burgers.
You're doing a great job, I must say.
I'm gonna look and see if my fat ratio. I mean, that's pretty good, right? I mean, obviously we're gonna take some of it off, but
I just say
in
take
terms
down
of
this
yeah,
ridge a little bit. Honestly, not much.
can I do this right here?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So like I know I can keep going. I can take off like most of this shit off, right? Am I supposed to be cutting away from me? Is that a thing? Okay. Good to know. God. Ugh, it looks so gross right here.
It's okay.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to just like cut like.
Okay.
Yeah.
How's she doing so far?
Pretty good. Pretty good. A lot of it is like creating angles and then kind of shaving them down.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
you're gonna do is take basically this
Yeah,
angle
you want
and
it
then
to be
move
the
it
same.
over, and then try to make it parallel.
It's so skinny.
Right. So just over there, you got that one, and then trace the curve.
I'm going for it.
Yeah, do it.
I just
Point
grind
of no
mine
return.
up and
Keep your
form it
tip on the board, make
afterwards.
sure you're cutting all the way through.
Okay.
Very nice.
Look how pretty it is.
So, yeah,
Beautiful.
that's
Yay.
better than mine.
So you can kind of go, basically from right there
Mhm.
all the way to.
Okay. Just get all that
like
out.
right there. Yeah. Yes. 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 Yes.
Even a little bit more.
That's good. That's good right there.
Okay.
Beautiful.
That's this little guy right here. This little guy sticking
Yeah.
out. Get that guy off. Get the fuck out of here. Just like nip that little kind of corner right
Okay.
there.
Nip the tip. That's why they call it a brisket.
You're done.
I did it.
Really nice.
Yeah.
Over.
So much better than mine.
It's probably a B plus, honestly. It looks better than mine.
The shape on it is phenomenal.
Yeah. it
Well,
looks better than
I
mine.
started off with the better.
That's true.
I did it!
Done.
Yay! And if I did it, you can do it too.